Hello, I'm John Feldt. Welcome to the weekly water outlook from Blue Water Outlook on May 5th, 2013. Well, by far the big weather event over the last week was this closed low that's drifted across the nation. You know, it's somewhat unusual to get this time of year, this type of closed low, but it's not unheard of. And these types of upper closed lows make their own weather. So even though the upper jet stream was to our north, this low brought weather very reminiscent of late winter or spring, with record amounts of snow in parts of Colorado and the Midwest, record amounts of rain, daily rainfall over the Midwest and Southeast U.S., and flooding in many locations. So this was definitely the main weather maker over the last week. Interesting that the enhanced rainfall sort of came in these streaks, and I wanted to point out these three streaks, and they sort of refired every 12 hours. So you first had the streak of rain over the Midwest from roughly Memphis to St. Louis on north. That's the area in yellow there. Second one produced very heavy rain near Birmingham and to the east of Birmingham. And then the third one was over the southeast U.S. that produced very heavy rain. And actually, we're going to have another one further east of that. So you can see, look how widespread the rain was due to this upper low that moved over the area over the last week. So this is the overall picture. I think it's sort of interesting here. Look at the streaks here. See these? Look at the alignment of precipitation. This looks a little bit different than in here, doesn't it? So I mentioned these rain streaks here. These are snow streaks, and this snow worked up here, and this is the colder air, and we had a very unusual late season or early spring snow in that region. And you can see on radar estimates the streakiness with that snow versus the overall rain pattern in the southeast U.S. But again, look at how much rain from a national perspective and snow or precipitation occurred from this low as it developed over the middle part of the nation and then generally drifted down to the southeast U.S. and now it's going to be drifting off to the east. A lot of weather with this closed low. So we end up with a pattern here of many areas now are getting close to getting too much rain and other areas not enough. It's really a picture of extremes here. The dark green are areas that see saturated upper soils. They're prone to flooding. They're prone to agricultural issues, delays in operations. On the other hand, the very dry soils in the southwest U.S., you've heard of the forest fires, early start of the forest fires. That area has been very dry. And then in the middle of the nation, we have a transition. Maybe in some ways you could say a little bit closer to normal stream or soil moisture, but look how narrow that is. So we definitely have wet soils, and then we have areas of dry soil, and it really is very noticeable and abrupt as far as where these areas are. And they correspond to stream flow. Blues are above normal stream flow, blacks well above normal stream flow. And these trends that we've had for the last month, you can really see here from the upper Midwest across parts of the Midwest into the southeast U.S. This is the area where stream flow is very high. We have flooding. This is your spring snowmelt flooding. And then we have areas of very low stream flow over the southwest U.S., Texas, and the northeast U.S. is very dry recently, and that's why stream flows are very low in that area as well. So last week, quite a bit of snow in areas. Blues are the really unusually high amounts of snow. Colorado's part of Minnesota, parts of Iowa, even dipped down into Missouri. And this is the type of snow this type of year that melts very quickly when we get it. So if we look at the depth of snow on the ground, there is a little bit of snow still in parts of Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, also Missouri. The Missouri snow will be melting almost within hours here today. But look at the upper Midwest here. I wanted to point out that the snowpack that produced the Red River flooding is now all melted. It's in the ground on its way or in the rivers. So I don't expect any more. And like I'd been forecasting, it does look like it's going to be very isolated. And you can see that here from our floods. This is the upper Midwest snowmelt flooding. And like I said, I expected many months now I've been saying that it could be very more significant, but it's going to be isolated in coverage, and indeed that looks like what did occur. On the other hand, like I mentioned in my newsletter I just issued, forecasting precipitation in advance is a little bit more tricky, and the Midwest rainfall enhancement over the spring was hard to forecast much in advance, but it caused quite a bit of flooding, and areas of red or moderate flooding, areas of purple are major flooding, and you can see along the Midwest, Mississippi, parts of the Missouri, Illinois rivers, and their tributaries, moderate flooding. Now you can also see in the southeast U.S. with the recent rain a bit of minor flooding in that region, so that's a little bit more on the right on the edge of getting more significant flooding. Right now it's more scattered and minor flooding. So here's the big picture this week. The low pressure that's really been causing all the problems will be drifting off to the northeast, and that's going to bring continued impacts along parts of the southeast U.S. into the mid-Atlantic. Keep in mind, you get that heavy rain up in the higher elevations, and you really are looking at flash flooding and debris flow, and that is definitely a possibility in those regions. Now, the jet stream, we have a positive Arctic oscillation, and what that's going to do is keep that jet stream up to the north. Now, you wouldn't really realize we have that because it's been pretty dismal and cool over much of the nation, but that's been due to that area of low pressure. So when that jet stream begins to dip to the south later this week, that will bring a band of showers and thunderstorms to the middle part of the nation. Much quieter this upcoming week than last week, but there will be a chance of some precipitation after a midweek break. So here's your forecast for rainfall this week. Wanted to point out the early and mid-week precipitation in the mid-Atlantic and parts of the southeast U.S. That's due to that upper low drifting off to the northeast. And then the mid to late week precipitation is due to a frontal boundary pushing through that area. And over Texas there, that's an area that really could use some rain, so that would be welcome. And hopefully over the Midwest, another inch of rain. It's getting pretty soggy in many of these areas from an agriculture standpoint. Hopefully that'll be more modest than the last week and maybe more scattered in coverage as well. I wanted to look out a little bit later through the middle part of the month and just sort of give you some of the trends here. Keep in mind this is subject to change. These models this far out do change sometimes significantly, but I wanted to point out that the upper Midwest does look like it's going to be tending or trending towards drier conditions. The southwest U.S. unfortunately is going to also continue dry. The area along the southern part of Georgia and Alabama into much of Florida is going to tend towards dry. And then keep in mind that area from Kansas, parts of Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, Kentucky, Tennessee, that looks like that area is going to be fairly wet right through the middle part of the month. So that's going to be the focus of, I think, the potential for flooding, potential for soggy fields will be in that region. Now, we'll have to see how this works out, but it's possible that this area here could be on the northern edge of the rain, and if that's the case, that would give that area of the Midwest some time to dry out. But we'll see. Sometimes these axes very much can switch either north or south, and that'd make a big impact. So soil moisture changes over the next couple weeks. Next week, wanted to point out that it looks like the biggest changes in soil moisture will be that upper low Kentucky into the middle Atlantic region, as well as parts of the Rockies. Also, keep in mind in Texas there is a chance of some improvement in soil moisture, but I think that event that is later this week, there's a little bit more uncertainty to that, so we'll have to see how that turns out. Takeaway points from this week's briefing. The upper low impacts will gradually be diminishing as it moves off to the northeast U.S., but keep in mind and keep alert for flooding, including flash flooding, for the early part of this week. Once that moves off, it looks like more moderate precipitation this week than last week, and there could be a chance of some welcome rainfall over parts of the south in the mid to latter part of this week. If you ever have any questions, feel free to email me at john@bluewateroutlook.com. We'll be updating our briefing again next week.